All right, so I just went over all my parts with the palm sander. So I'll show you what that looks like up close. So this did like most of the hard work, maybe like 80% of the hard work. Just like bringing down all of the layers that were sort of too high down to one level. I'll show you the body as well. The body looks a little rough because it's printed like this and it's got support on the front, but that was unavoidable because of the threads. That's just like the way that we had to print. But you see how like it's got that like white grainy look? That's sort of what you want all around. And then like the parts that are lower than the actual surface are going to be that dark color still. The feet are a little tough. I didn't really hit these at all, really. And then I did the tops of the wings, the top of each wing just a little bit. You don't have to worry about the gear because that's not shown. And then I did the jaw as well. And that's with the palm sander on a pretty low setting. I keep it on like the lowest setting. And then I do I make sure I'm always moving. That's the trick. So if you stay in one spot, your plastic is gonna get too hot and then it's gonna start melting and warping and ruining the shape. So you want to be constantly moving all around. If you keep it moving, then the plastic won't get hot and you'll keep the nice form and it'll sand it nice and smooth and do most of the hard work for you. So we just hit it with I think an 80 grit on the palm sander. Now I'm gonna go over with by hand with an 80 and 220 and just get rid of this rough texture, and then we're gonna move on to filling. All right, so now we're gonna fill with wood filler. This stuff is great. So the trick for this is it's like a thick peanut butter consistency, and if it's too thick, I have a little spray bottle, but you can add a little bit of water to thin it out, and you just wanna you don't want to add too much because this stuff dries and it's like you can sand it down, but if you put too much on, you're gonna create a lot of work for yourself. But you kind of want to just smear it on with your finger and cover all those crevices. So this is like a pretty problematic area because the way the support attached to it, but our goal is to just fill in these gaps and like brush over it. You don't want to go too thick. This stuff does sand down, but we want to go as thin as possible and not create extra work for ourselves. You want to make sure the gap is sort of fully covered so that when you sand it down, it'll sand down flat compared to the plastic around it. And then we also have our belly lines that we're avoiding, right? And then I have this nice tool. It's just like this scraper, because if I did need to pull out any gook, I would use this to get out of those lines. But I'm just gonna go all the way around and cover this. I'll show you guys when I'm done. All right, so I just went over all the parts and wood filled them, and you see how we had all those layer lines before? I did a nice even coat all around, making sure to cover all of our little pothole areas, filling in all the gaps. Make sure you do a good job all the way around. The back was really bad before. You can still see some. We might have to do a couple layers of this. Here's the head. But you can already see that like once this dries and then once we sand it down, it's gonna be so smooth compared to the other parts. The feet, I did like basically no sanding because I knew I was gonna fill it a lot because of the way I printed it. So yeah, did a little bit of sanding, maybe 20 minutes with the orbital sander, just went around all the parts. Take your sandpaper by hand. I did an 80 grit and then a 220 grit, and then did a pass with my hand on all the parts just quickly, a couple minutes. Then I went around for 10 minutes, took me like 10 minutes with the wood fill, filled in all the gaps, and we're gonna let this dry. Let's see if it says how long it takes to dry. So it doesn't say on here how long it takes to dry. Usually I just do it overnight. On like a warm sunny day, I would maybe say that it would take like a few hours. Also, never leave PLA parts like directly in the sun. They will warp. You don't want that. They are highly affected by the sun. So I have everything in like a shed right now. But the great thing about this stuff is it's also non-toxic. It's non-toxic to sand. So some people use like Bondo spot putty to fill in the gaps that like people use for like model making too. That you have to wear a respirator for. It gets everywhere and it's toxic. This is not toxic. So I love it. It's great. Sands down smooth. And dries pretty quickly. So I'm gonna let this dry overnight. We're gonna come back tomorrow, sand this down, and maybe do one more layer and then possibly go to filler primer. All right, so we're back a day later. Looks like our wood fill is all dry. So let's get to sanding this now. You can sand by hand, but I took a palm sander because some of this stuff is a little bit tough to get off. But this is what your part should look like. All the major gaps are basically filled, right? Like you saw this whole area was super messed up from where the support was hanging off, but now it's basically filled in. And I went through and did this for all the parts. You should see all the areas where the wood fill filled in, like the big gaps, right? I didn't really sand these, but we'll take care of that. And now we're gonna go on with a layer of filler primer. I'm using Duplicolor filler primer. This stuff is great, but kind of expensive. You could use whatever filler primer you want. Just make sure you read the instructions. Like this one says, shake vigorously for 1 full minute. Shake can for 10 seconds after each minute of use. I'm supposed to do 2 light coats followed by 1 medium coat. Sounds stupid, but for the longest time I was just like spraying however I wanted, and then I started following the instructions, and of course, by magic, my results were way better. So obviously, listen to the instructions. It'll go very far for you, and we're gonna apply some of this now.
All right, I want to explain spray painting. I know it sounds stupid, but like maybe look up an additional video just to make sure on this, but it's hard if you don't do it right. First of all, read the instructions thoroughly. Every paint is different, and also every brand is different. Like if you try and mix and match, if you use Rust-Oleum primer and like Duplicolor spray paint, they may not like chemically want to work together, and they could cause like cracks and have like weird interactions. So if you have like a finished project, make sure you have like a test print to test the primer and paint, whatever you're planning on using, before you go to your final project, so you don't ruin your final project. Couple things to know about spray painting that you can see what I'm doing is like, so say for instance, this is my spray bottle. So let's say like this is my object, right, that I'm spray painting, and the red and the black is going to be my spray paint. So first of all, you don't want to start spray painting right on the object. You want to start like slightly to the left of it, so you're already moving. You're already moving by the time you hit your object. So you're already moving. You go past it, you stop. Then you lower, come down, and you want to overlap by like 50% your strokes. So this should be like this, right? Start before it, go after it, you stop. The reason why is because this will give like constant like layer thickness to the paint layer that you're applying on like each layer. And also, if you like stand still in one spot and you don't keep the spray can moving, your paint will build up all in one spot, and then it'll start to drip. Some spray paints are like more prone to this than others. Like metallic paints are really bad for this because I think they're like super thin. So that's sort of the idea. And then like the next layer, same thing. You start from the left, overlap by 50%. Keep it moving. Go 1, 2, 3, 4. You want to keep overlapping each stroke by 50%. Also, shake the can thoroughly before. You want to thoroughly mix the paint. as well as possible. Once again, make sure you read the instructions. Some paints don't like being painted like if it's super humid out, because like moisture can get trapped under the paint and it won't dry properly. So it's good to wait for like humidity between like 40 and 60%. Um, but yeah, read the instructions. Some say like, shake the can, whatever, for like a minute, and then like apply one light coat, then one medium coat. Every paint is different, but like it's so stupid, but it took me so long to realize, like, just read the instructions and really listen to them. They know what they're talking about, and sort of apply this practice while you're applying filler primers. Like, you have a little bit of leeway because you're just going to sand it anyway. But if you're applying a final paint, make sure you follow these rules if you want to get like a really, really nice finish.
All right, all our parts are printed, so now let's printed and fully painted. Like this looks beautiful. I really like this purple that I picked. So now let's go back to assembling Spike. Let's start with the wings. Make sure the wings are like symmetrically aligned, so they're like on the same angle. Gotta make sure they're not too tight so they can freely move. Stepper motor, and then the pressure plate. These can be tightened all the way down. You want these guys to be tight, but not like insanely tight where you can't undo them if you don't want to. Okay, so now put them in like a normal resting position and then put the stepper motor gear on. There we go. All right, so when this rotates, should be able to, yeah, there we go. Okay, now I'm gonna do the head now. I gotta reattach the servo motor to the head. All right, so our servo motor is mounted on here. You're gonna need a tiny screwdriver to put these thread fastening screws in, thread forming screws. So now we'll attach the jaw. Remember, try and lead in the servo horn first. And if you have your tolerances right, it should sort of snap press fit in. There we go. Okay. So this is our mouth. Looks good. I'm gonna put this through the neck hole now. And then do one more screw to secure it in place. And then the back. And then the screws in the back. I guess we forgot to paint these, but that's all right. I don't think anyone's gonna be looking at the back too much. Okay. Boom. Spec looks great. I'd have to loosen, make sure the back isn't too tight because you want a little bit of space between the wings and the back so the wings can like freely come up and down. Okay, so now we have to hot glue the feet on. That's the last step. Some hot glue to get these feet on. Also, a trick is if you wanted it to really stick, you could take a little bit of sandpaper and just scratch this surface, which creates like roughness or like micro scratches that like really lets the glue stick. I think this will be fine though. Yeah. So I'll just rough it up just a little bit. This lets the glue have something like to really attach to. You can do the same thing on the body. Okay. All right, now let's glue it. Let's make sure we got in the right position. I think this one goes here, and this one goes here. Yeah, okay. Like that. Just gonna hold it there for a second. Okay, now let's do the other foot. Put a decent amount of glue on there. Just like that. Hold it for a sec. I think we're good. He's looking good. Nice. Okay. Oh, actually, the last thing we should do is hot glue the ultrasonic sensor in. All right. So for this, I'm just gonna I'll put a little bit of glue just like on these little perimeters right here. You don't need a ton. Just a dab. Just to have it something to like bite onto, and then we're just gonna press the ultrasonic sensor in, hold it for a sec. That should be good. All right, now let's wire them back up. Make sure this thing works. All right, so I'm running into an issue where the wings aren't going that high, and I think that's just like the position that we put the stepper motor into. I'll show you how to fix that. So I think the issue is if you got to make sure your bolts are like not too tight, not too loose, but also like where it starts matters. So like if it starts here and then you close the back, all right, so yeah, I think that's better. You just have to adjust you've got to adjust the starting position by taking out the power and then lifting the wings up to where you want them to. Also, the breadboard is kind of cheap, so if you have wires that keep coming out of here, you can hot glue these into place so they are secured.